That's an interesting point, isn't it, Hans? Because, the Trump administration's goal, stated goal in this maximum pressure campaign is to force Iran to come back to the negotiating table and negotiate a new deal, which would be more all-encompassing, including the likes of ballistic missiles as well as Iran's regional role, right? So if that is the goal, in part at least, do you think that maybe a good gesture at this point, a positive gesture, would sort of also entrap Iran in a sense, where it would publicly be told, listen, we're lifting these sanctions for XYZ amount of period, so you can deal with this outbreak within your own country, and so it does not spread to your neighboring countries as well as it has. And listen, let's then work together.
Well, I mean, obviously this, as you know, from a European perspective, there is not an unmitigated appreciation and love for the current U.S. policy on Iran as far as the nuclear dossier is concerned, right? We, from the European side, thought we had a very, very good and workable deal, and it's now, essentially falling apart month by month in front of our eyes. My suggestion, of course, if you're talking about economic recovery, would be to take the Iranians by their word. And I mean the application or the call of Foreign Minister Zarif for IMF relief funds. In my opinion or my assessment, this was more a political maneuver than actually a serious call, because on the one hand, clearly the United States is going to very likely block the IMF from doing this. On the other hand, I think even if the U.S. administration would refrain from doing that, Iran would be very hesitant to actually accept the money, because this money does come with strings attached, and that means you need to do some very painful economic reforms. Now, if I would be the American decision makers right now, knowing that if sanctions relief is announced for Iran, I will get a lot of pushback domestically. I would simply let the IMF or allow, not block the IMF to provide those funds for Iran, and therefore force the Iranian side to actually do some very necessary economic reforms that will help the economic recovery in the long run. Unfortunately, I agree with my colleague here that I just don't see a political path in this current situation for this particular American administration to announce actual sanctions relief. I also think that there is an argument to be made of whether sanctions relief in a broader scale, so that you enable U.S. sanctions relief in a broader scale, so enable economic recovery, would actually lead to an economic recovery inside Iran, unless there is an extra push factor for the Iranian regime to actually do that, and not just simply finance other projects that they have, including their very problematic regional behavior. So the IMF route, where there is then a set program of what the government who receives the funds needs to be doing, is actually, in my opinion, a more workable one if economic recovery in the long run is a secondary or, at this point, primary purpose.